The face of budget premium has a new name at Evetech. It's Deepcool. And we're continuing along that path with their CK560. Good afternoon, morning, and welcome to Turbo Tortoise Tech. If you're new here, I'm Reese of the 4-piece variety, Milwaukee Triple XL. And I've got next to me a CK560, the new, well, not new, but Deepcool's one of their good cases, their good mid-tower chassis. They promised me exceptional results, and boy, has it delivered. It's actually really sick because it practically has all of the big boy features from much more expensive cases, like 700-800 Rand more expensive compared to this. And when it wasn't special at 1599, it actually turns out to be having been pretty much the bargain of the century, because it comes with 4 included fans and it's got an incredibly good layout, and 3 of those fans have RGB, as you'll see on the front over there, and those fans all have really high airflow, like incredibly, like actually kind of insane. And then they put a 140 for the extract at the back instead of just a normal 120, so it's somewhat balancing out the intake over here. But you don't really want to do that because you want to keep static pressure as well. So it's kind of very well thought out. And the whole case is really like that. It's unique as well. It's very Deepcool. And the way they've gone about their methodology versus others is kind of fantastic. Like, it's very simple ways of fixing major problems that exist within the PC case environment. But before I get too ahead of myself, let's go from bottom to top with the physical case. So PSU shroud along the bottom, 360 mils worth of radiator or fan space / radiator space up front. There is a cutout in the top of the rad for that, so that, well, a cutout in the top of the shroud at least for the rad to be able to fit in there. I obviously opted not to use the radiator because this 3070 Ti is a very long boy GPU, so we've put in just the AK400 for the time being, which actually is surprisingly more than enough for the 12600K. I keep going back to this chip. It's such a good little chip right now. It's pretty much the best price versus performance chip in the market. Thank you, Intel, for that. But up front, you've got 3 of their ARGB fans, which have really good airflow for included fans, and that's something I immediately noticed over here as well. You'll see me leaning out like this because I'm actually getting cold back here, because there's actually so much airflow with the case open. I'm literally getting cold from the air from the fan. It's overwhelmingly good, like these fans, and you'll see how good they are actually in the tests. But full mesh up front, a double quick release system as well, which I really do like. So it's got a metal plate on the outside which is just magnetically attached, and then there's a clip in for the mesh in front of that. But then you're straight into the fan stack, so it's really easy access. You don't have to take off the whole front of the case. It's just straight through the front like that, which I really like. I hate having to take out these little plastic grommets that stick through. You've got to pinch them and then push the whole thing off, and then the other side sounds like it's breaking, and maybe it does, and the plastic cracks, and it's just not a great experience. With it set up like that, it's some of the easiest access you're going to get. Then along the side of the inside, you'll notice there's 2 garrets over there with the rubberized inside of them with just a slit so that you can pass cables and stuff through. But on the back of those, there's channeling for those cables, as well as points that you can hook your cable ties around. And because of that, because it's a 2-in-1, you get both channeling and a sort of neatness from it. And you'll see with the image of the back plate now, it does deliver a very clean build. They've done similarly along the top the appropriate holes for you to get cables and stuff into the top of the motherboard, whether it's for RGB or for your 8 pins for your CPU power. You'll be able to get them around the edges quite nicely. The back panel as well is done pretty simply. It does look like there was a consideration maybe to do vertical GPUs over here with this big piece of mesh that's just sitting open over here. There's nothing to indicate that it could be removed or anything like that, but maybe that was a consideration during the design process, and perhaps some of the other models do have a vertical GPU mount in that exact spot. So it's kind of, it just seems like something that was considered, but maybe they turned away from it. Around the back and the bottom as well, you'll notice it's got two 3.5-inch drive bays. There's a couple of 2.5-inch mounts at the back for SSDs on the back of the motherboard over here as well. And then just look at how much space there is around the PSU. Like, this is quite a decent sized PSU. It's an 850 watt gold. I mean, it's going to have to be to get all the coils and caps and everything in there to be able to get to that rating. So it is quite a fat boy, and it almost disappears inside of the case, leaving you nice. Like, I know Uncle Jay, you hate it, but I'd like to put my cable, just wrap them up and shove them in front of the power supply. This is modular, so really you're not going to have any sort of superfluous cables. But then at the top, you'll notice that there's a tiny little PCB that's got nothing connected to it. That's actually the built-in controller, which I've completely disconnected because I'm controlling the fans straight from the motherboard, which is just the better way to do it, especially when they are addressable. And honestly, MSI's color shift is one of the prettier looking color shifts around, so it does look really, really nice on those fans. So it's a well thought out, well-dimensioned, mid-sized tower. But let's talk about performance. So what I did was I did an open air test with everything inside of here and then closed it up to see how much difference there would be in, obviously there being less air, well, the air intake only coming from the front. And I'm pleased to report that there was such a small marginal difference that it's almost undetectable. And actually, the open air test, some of the fan speeds were actually higher, especially where the CPU was concerned, than they were with it closed. So with very similar temperatures, very similar clock speeds as well. Clock speeds were almost identical. And even when I did the stability test with Firestrike, you'll notice that it went from like a 98.2 to a 98.0, and then I ran it one more time and it went 98.1. So very, very consistent performance across the board, and with almost no fan curve. I even tried to increase the fan curve manually to see if it would make a difference on that 98.1, and even maxing it out, it really didn't make a difference because of how much airflow is coming from these fans. It's taking my decibel meter and literally sticking it right in the fan. I couldn't even get it to 50 decibels. Whereas like a gaming laptop that I would have for review, for instance, its baseline would be like 50 decibels, going closer to 60. As I'm speaking to you right now, or as my voice would be, I generally peak in the high 60s, low 70 decibels because I've got this boomy Welsh voice of mine. So it tends to create quite a lot of noise. I'm a noisy kind of guy. So this was just a pleasant hum on the desk throughout the testing. And I was like, does this thing ever throw fan curve? It just doesn't have to. It just doesn't really need to. All of these are set up to be controlled from the motherboard with PWM, etc. But it just doesn't need any fan curve because of how efficient they run, because of the way that they've designed their blades and stuff. Keeps the noise down, keeps the airflow up, which is absolutely perfect. Now, some considerations though with this is if you are going for a really long boy GPU and you do want to have water cooling, there's just not going to be enough space up top because of the way they've dimensioned it and stuff. Even if you put the 240 right on the inside, it is going to stick over the motherboard somewhat, maybe bashing into your RAM, which isn't going to be ideal. So if you are looking at water cooling on this build, the front side would be ideal for you. And then if you want to do a push-pull, there's just not going to be enough space. Well, I say that, it's going to be marginal. Some other case manufacturers allow you to put the fans in front, but if you had to do that with this build, which you could do, mind you, but you're going to lose your mesh. So all that dust and stuff is going to come inside of the case. So honestly, for me, this is really good as a mid-range case that you kind of want to fire and forget on, that you might be happy to move some of the fans around. And I would honestly see this going really well with a 240mm push-pull on the front, because those brackets up front are not set and they've got quite a lot of positional advantage to them, as it were. You could even do the inverted style, which has become quite popular, to keep the air that exists within the cooler at the top and away from the pump and stuff. And it would work quite nicely for that because you can slide it up all the way to the top. Then you could have a push-pull in with that, with a mid-size GPU, maybe not a Supreme X 3070 Ti, like 330mm ultra long boy. That's maybe not the ideal setup for this. Honestly, if this case was, I would say, 50 mils longer, then with the same format as this, it would be absolutely perfect. One thing that I've skipped over here with the GPU, actually, let me just take a step back, is they include a GPU anti-sag bracket, which is just a really, really nice little touch. And it's honestly probably, let's say, $5 to $10 worth of actual material that they have to put into that. I'm not sure about the machining costs or anything for that. But on a production cost cycle, it's not an expensive addition, and it makes the world of difference. This GPU comes with its own SAG bracket, but if I don't need to use it and it's sitting at the back, along the back of the case where you can barely even see it, it's going to look absolutely fantastic up front, leaving you with a nice, neat, clean face for that glass side panel. That for me was the tipping point where it went from just being like, yeah, sure, this case feels right at about 1,600 to like, okay, a daily retail price of $2,000 for this with these fans, with all of this sort of thinking into it, is pretty damn good. And I really like that it is uniquely Deepcool. They're going for this very angular, very machined, very CAD sort of look and feel. They wanted to feel like products that were designed entirely and built entirely by computers, and they've pulled it off like immeasurably, because even in the patchwork at the top of the cooler, it's got all the, you know, angles and cross section stuff. All of the mesh is done like that. It's a very efficient way to do stuff as well. It's going to give a lot of, you know, open surface area. The more open, obviously, the easier the airflow. And because of the way that they've done it, it's giving a visual effect as well as good performance, which we can obviously see with the benchmark results. So all around, it's a very, very strong product, and I'm so glad Deepcool is now at Evetech, because honestly, that was, it feels like it was a hole in the head that was absolutely missing. You could go from very entry level, good bang for buck stuff to like super high end, and there was just a little bit of lacking in between. And this is like budget premium. That's the best way that I could describe it. Is it's incredibly well spec'd. So if you looked at like high-end cases of like 3,000 Rand, they'll have everything that this has, but they're 3,000 Rand. This is 30%, you know, 50% less than those sort of high-end products. And honestly, if you're looking for a good case that's going to last you a long while, that you can always have a good mid to higher-end system in with absolutely no problems, then this comes highly suggested. This is one of the better cases that I've tested pretty much this year, and I'm just thrilled. I'm just thrilled Deepcool's there, because it's going to make building PCs around people's budgets and expectations a lot easier for me as well. I absolutely love doing it. So yeah, we're going to maybe do some of that in the future on the channel, but we'll see. Got big plans for 2022 and 2023. But until next time, I hope you guys stay safe, keep well. If you have enjoyed it, please do hit us up with a like and subscribe, and I will see you on the flip side. It might be cold right now, but things are holding up with the Deepcool. I'm not going to do a lame intro like that, I promise. I promise. We'll try harder.